I have 10 amazing historical fiction books to recommend to you by the decade, so let's get into it. Hi, I'm Lace, I love to read. Thanks for coming to my channel. I love reading historical fiction. It's honestly probably one of my most favorite genres to read, and I've never done a recommendation video, so I have one today with 10 historical fiction books by the decade. So I tried to find one from every decade in the 1900s. I do have one from the 1800s, and one of my decades I did join two together. So we ended up with 10, and I'm just super excited to get into it and talk to you about them. Okay, we're starting out with an amazing book, The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead. This book is 313 pages and I rated it 5 stars. This story is about Cora, and she's a slave in Georgia, and she and another slave named Caesar decide to embark on the Underground Railroad. And it kind of details different people in the Underground Railroad, different towns, different states. And honestly, it's a beautiful but heartbreaking read. I find Colson Whitehead stories to be really important to read, and I think that they teach you a lot that you didn't learn in school. And there's so many things that started and originated in the Underground Railroad that is still present in the world today. And I just think this book is so beautifully written and is a must-read historical fiction. Next, we're moving on to the 1900s. So this book is set in 1906. It is called The Nature of Fragile Things by Susan Meisner. I loved this book so much as well. This book is 364 pages and I rated it once again 5 stars. You're gonna notice that I rate a lot of these 5 stars because once you read them and you read these stories, it's really hard to not remember these books and think so highly of them. So this book is set in San Francisco, but it's told the story of Sophie. Sophie is a mail order bride. She lived in New York, however, she came from Ireland, and she ended up moving to San Francisco to marry Martin. And Martin has a young daughter, and then her world kind of flips on its axis when a woman shows up and has a tie to Martin. And she's not the only one. And the thing that blows this story up is that there's a huge earthquake that hits San Francisco the night that this woman shows up at her door. So these women kind of band together to survive this natural disaster, and it just shows how much women can stick together and make it out and how resilient people are. And it was just beautiful, and it was very interesting from the start. We're moving on to the 1910s. This book is set in Pennsylvania. It is called Nicole River by Ellen Marie Wiseman. I love Ellen Marie Wiseman's historical fiction. I've read 2 books by her, and both of them I found to be really great. This book was 327 pages and I rated it 4.5 stars. This book is about Emma, and she becomes an orphan and moves to Pennsylvania in a town called Coal River. She moves in with her aunt and uncle. They essentially make her their servant. And so they own a store that all the coal miners have to shop at, and they are basically forcing all of these coal miners to be in their debt. And Emma, not only disliking her family because of how greedy they are and how unkindly they treat her, she starts to support the miners in any way she can. So sometimes she pays off their debt without telling her aunt and uncle. Sometimes she brings things to their house. She ends up meeting this miner who's doing similar things, like supporting these miners and working for better conditions. And so they work together to try and make better conditions for these miners. But it gets her into a lot of trouble. So I just thought this book was really beautiful, and I love this book, and I love Ellen Marie Wiseman. And now we're at the double up. So I did double up the 1920s and the 1930s because I honestly did not have a 1920s book. So if you have any recommendations, please leave them below. But The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna. This book was 448 pages and I rated it 4.5 stars. This book starts in 1920s and finishes in the 1930s. So it's about Elsa. She grew up in Texas, in the Great Plains. In the 20s, it was very prosperous. They were making a lot of money. They had a lot of food and safety, and then the drought hits. And in the 30s, a lot of people have to make a really hard decision, also during the Great Depression, whether or not to stay where they are and hope that the land will continue to save them, which it isn't at the moment because of the drought, or to move to California, where it's said to have jobs and safety and a better life. And I just thought it was a really beautiful story about motherhood, really, because she had to decide whether or not to take her kids to California or stay and risk the drought in the Great Plains. And so I thought it was just a beautiful story, and Kristen Hanna makes amazing historical fictions. I have 2 more in this recommendation video, and I just think you can't go wrong with her as well. And now we make it to the 1940s, and so we make it to The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. This book was 545 pages and I rated it 5 stars. This is one that I will say, it takes a while to get into, but oh my, this book is beautiful. it will have you bawling. I remember the feelings I had when I was reading this book, but it did take a long time to get into. But it follows two sisters who are taking advocacy and survival in different ways. And so one sister is surviving in her home and helping the people around her, where the other sister is helping the greater good, if you will, and doing things to change not just her life, but the life of people around them. So it's beautiful. It's just such a beautiful book, and I definitely recommend it if you love historical fiction. I've never heard anyone regret reading this book. So for the 1950s, I have The Henna Artist by Alka Joshi. This book is 342 pages, and I rated it 5 stars. This book was beautiful. It was really cool to read a book about an Indian woman who is kind of paving her own way. And so this book is about Lakshmi, and she leaves a really bad arranged marriage, and she ends up going to Jaipur and becomes a henna artist for the wealthy woman in upper class society. And it's going well. She's making a lot of money. She's about to have her own home, and then her husband finds her and brings her sister. She had no idea she had a sister, and so her life kind of turns on its axis. And it was just such an amazing read. This is a trilogy, and I haven't gotten to the second and third book, but I really am excited to get to them. Now we're in the 1960s, and I have The Berry Pickers by Amanda Peters. This book was 304 pages. I rated it 5 stars. And this book follows 2 different storylines. So it follows Joe, and he's an Indigenous man who every summer his family would go from Nova Scotia to Maine to pick berries and make a living, and then they would go back home. And it also follows a woman named Norma who lives in Maine, and her life is really not what it seems. And it was just beautiful. It was heartbreaking. It was beautiful. I loved it so much. I found this one a really easy to get into. So I feel like if you are kind of hesitant about historical fiction, this book, I feel like I just flowed right into it, and I really, really enjoyed the writing, and the story was beautiful. But just beware, there was a lot of heavy topics in this book because people go through a lot of heavy things, but I thought it was very, very worth it, and I just cannot say enough good things. In the 1970s, we're back with Kristen Hanna. This book is called The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. It's 545 pages, 5 stars. This is one of my all-time favorite Kristen Hanna books. I think this is my favorite out of the 3 that I've talked about. However, like I said, you can't go wrong with any of them. So the Albright family, there's 3 of them. It's Ernst, Cora, and Lenny. Ernst was a veteran from the Vietnam War, and he came back with a lot of trauma. And so they just needed to get away. So they decided to move to a very rural and extremely hard to survive in town in Alaska. There are so many amazing and strong women in this book, and it really is just a book about survival and family dynamics and resiliency and getting through tough times. So I thought it was just a beautiful story, and you will be bawling. It's just a very emotional read, but just beautiful, and I loved it so much. And now we made it. We are in the 1980s, and I have Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book was 365 pages, and shocker, I gave it 5 stars. I feel like this whole video is just me telling you how much I love all these authors and these books, and it's really true. Like, you really can't go wrong with any of these. But Malibu Rising is one of Taylor Jenkins Reid's more underrated books, in my opinion. I don't see nearly enough about it. It is honestly one of my favorite books of hers so far that I've read. And so this book is set in the 80s, and it follows 4 siblings of a very famous singer. And so it is the night of one of the siblings' big party that she throws in Malibu every year, and it is just a 24-hour sequence of time from before the party, during, and after the party. It's a beautiful story about family dynamics, celebrity, about society as a whole. It's just really such a great read, and I think that Taylor Jenkins Reid is a really good intro to historical fiction because her books are very easy to get into as well. And then to end it off with the 1990s, I have another Taylor Jenkins Reid book. It says Carrie Sto is back, and this book is 364 pages. I also rated it 5 stars. This book is about Carrie Sto, and Carrie Sto was an amazing tennis player. World-renowned, she had so many records, and then she retired, and then someone beat her record. And so she decides to go back and do one more year of tennis to take her record back. Her dad is her coach. She has a lot of history with some other tennis players, and it is a beautiful story of redemption and doing things that you didn't think were possible, and I just loved this book. I don't even care, not in a rude way, but I just don't care about tennis. It's not a sport I ever really cared about. It made you care. It didn't matter that you did or didn't like tennis. Like, you cared about tennis by the time you read this book, and I just loved it. I absolutely recommend. And now that I have taken you through the decades, those are all the recommendations I have for this video. Thank you so much for coming to my channel. I hope that you find a book that you love, and I'd love to hear any of your favorite historical fiction down in the comments below, because that is really one of my favorite genres. And I don't see a lot of recs, so I'm always looking for more. But I really, really appreciate you being here and watching this video, and I hope that the books that you read bring you joy.